These seem to be public access terminals, so I'm gonna read them. So deal with it.
Wasteland Anthropology, Unclassified Data, Missing Persons, Allison V. My introduction. I am Allison V. I am a tribal from New Arroyo who was taken in by NCR University when I was very young. I am trained in anthropology, and because of my own tribal background, I was chosen to document the lives and experience of the peoples of the past, so the NCR government can better prepare itself for their pacification and integration into the NCR.
You mean cultural genocide?
As a tribal myself, I see the benefits of joining the NCR. Our ancestors survived the supermutant attack on our ancestral vault, and we also survived a raid by the Enclave. We could not have survived without the NCR. But I hope to document the identity of these people before their own identity is taken away and they are forced to integrate into NCR culture. Before I leave the Territorial HQ, I want to outline the people of the past. I want to show these parts: notes on the Star Tribes, notes on Vault Dwellers, notes on Union City, notes on Raiders, notes on Super Mutants. Should I not return, you must find my journals and take them home to the university. The memory of these peoples may only be preserved in my notes and nowhere else.
Oh yeah, I remember reading some of her notes. Although it's sad that those notes are all what's left of most of those tribes.
Reported missing. Dr. Allison V. and her expedition of students from NCR University have been reported missing. Their last 3 scheduled check-ins have gone silent. They were reported seen all over the valley until March 9th. After that, they went dark. Our prime suspects remain the Raiders in Athens Tech Mine. However, insiders have yet to see them, although their possessions have appeared along with their dog tags at a Raider trade kiosk. As per NCR protocol, we have reported them as killed in the field. Colonel Silverman has sent a wreath to the students' families and expresses his condolences.
So they didn't even try to save them or even find them. They just assumed they were killed by the Raiders and shut it down. That's awful. Aw man, this one's locked. But I can get into it. Alright.
Enclave Propaganda Analysis. Confidential. Classification Level 1 NCR Intelligence Service.
Well, it's not classified anymore.
Introduction. As Enclave aggression peaked at the height of the NCR Enclave War, the turning point in the battle came as regular NCR citizens began to see the Enclave for what they were, and abandoned all support for their northern frontier operations, realizing they had been lied to, and in fact the Enclave, who billed themselves as the source of order and restoration of strength in America, were no different than any other band of well-organized raiders and slavers. They turned the battle to our cause. The key to this turning point came after we understood the weaknesses of their propaganda and began to combat it with the narrative of our own, based on analysis of secret wartime propaganda documents from the pre-war California government. After 200 years, it seems, the Enclave were simply playing the same tunes as their ancestors.
So this must have been the NCR Enclave War. They were fighting American propaganda with more American propaganda? Okay, then.
Indoctrination and infantilization. Every parent knows that children are the most obedient subjects when they are afraid, and when they believe their motivations are all their own. Instead of following the will of an adult, the suggestion is made that a child should do something for their own self-interest, or else they will lose something. Manipulating the population to behave like children, and believe their indoctrination is for their own benefit, proposed an original inspiration generated within the self, rather than external state influence, is key to the success of organic propaganda. Propaganda that the population believes it created itself, out of its own isolated and unique invention to novel circumstances. Step 1 is to make your citizens believe they are helpless and mentally incompetent. If a terrified population sees itself as insane, they will never try to understand their own circumstances with anything other than conspiracy theories and spiritual excuses. Because they never try to understand their circumstances, they never learn to control them. Because they are out of control, they never gain confidence. Thus, they never try to learn from their mistakes. Because they never learn from their mistakes, they remain incompetent, and the cycle of infantilization and dependence grows. They turn to religion, demonic possession narratives, and conspiracy theories to understand their own infirmity, rather than address the root cause of their infirmity, their lack of experience. Because these infantilized subjects believe they need the state to protect them, even when they hate the state, and clearly see it for the predatory institution it is, they will remain compliant and subservient despite all opportunity to challenge it. Because they need the state for order and livelihood, as every attempt they make to try on their own is undermined by their own incompetence. They are too powerless and the task too great to change it. So they do not try, they do not gain confidence, and they do not learn. This early domination makes the state seem all-powerful, because grassroots rebellions have limited reach with the maximum effort/risk required to make minimal change, where the state can simply wave its hand and thwart these startups at their earliest stage with no inconvenience. This deception can be used against both the establishment and anti-establishment forces in a society. For a reformer, paint them as madness, trying to disrupt a good thing, an imperial security and safety for the benefit of criminals and the insane. For a status quo, paint them as uncaring supporters of a tyrannical state of cruelty and inequity, bent on remaining lazy and stupid at all costs. While both positions may have merits, these merits get lost in a cacophony of desperate pleading and name-calling, doomed to blame the other for their own failure, rather than attempt to fix problems on their own. This vilifies both parties and enables the further entrenchment of infantilization and defamation of personal character.
You know, I've read a lot of history and some politics while I was in the vault, probably stuff I wasn't supposed to read, and this is incredibly patronizing. I mean, in history, yes, they have typically tried to paint this narrative of the reformers versus as pro-state people, but it completely ignores the third option of just saying, like, fuck the state. Let's start over or make something ourselves. So I just really think that they were out of touch with reality, especially since so many people didn't buy into any NCR propaganda, because from what I've read, they seem to be pretty unilaterally hated.
Examples of application. The soil of the northern frontier is still mildly radioactive after the Great War, and thus growing crops is exceedingly difficult, but not impossible, as it is in much of the Mojave in California. Most believe the land is cursed. The borderland between the Great Frost to the high frontier region and the deserts of Northern California are optimally suited for growing crops, although they are subject to sudden, inexplicable cold snaps and ubiquitous dry weather. Failure to understand this situation results in repeated colony collapse and farming failures. The NCR and Vault City began teaching these residents to grow crops using tilled soil in greenhouses, powered by replicated GEC technology. These very poor farm communities were recently pacified tribal peoples at the time of the Enclave invasion following the destruction of their oil rig, and were subject to regular raids by Vault Vikings and criminal scavengers, now locked away in NCR correctional facilities. The Enclave quickly took over operations and began putting the people to work with their own technology. This dependence on the Enclave allowed them to promote the persistent narrative that tribals are an inferior mutant people and chicken-headed, mentally deranged and incompetent. This subservience split their communities into those deemed worthy of Enclave service and those who were not. The have-nots being undermined by their own failed efforts, and the haves supported by the overwhelming advantage of the Enclave's technology. This allowed the few Enclave and their advanced power armor to control thousands of citizens in opposition to the Brotherhood and NCR both.
It seems like the Enclave just discriminate against anyone with mutations, which is just a stand-in for any tribal people.
Revising the indoctrination and role reversal. As Enclave Ibots soared over land dispensing their brand of propaganda and their stormtroopers raided vaults, such as Vault 13, they made their propaganda's message very clear. Prime normal humans are the best subjects for Enclave recruitment, and subhuman mutants and tribals are inferior, meant for slave labor, and nothing else good may come of them. Mutants and tribals are incapable of human intelligence and must be beasts of burden, or else they become a primitive criminal menace. Ignore the fact that Enclave expansion put them at odds with these peaceful communities in the first place, and it seems true. The tribals and mutants had no choice but to raid settlements or else they would starve, there being fewer and fewer peaceful means for free trade as there was with the NCR. This pit the chosen few against their wild brethren. Self-defense became the narrative of their personal superiority. After encouraging these rebellious tribals to fight for the NCR by building up their confidence in minor successes at the fringe of Enclave-held territory, we were able to reverse the psychological abuse and turn them into effective guerrilla fighters. After the Enclave defeat, this posed a problem. The guerrillas wanted their independence.
Well, no shit they wanted their independence. You taught them that they could fight for themselves, and that's all they wanted to do. Also, the Enclave is straight up promoting eugenics, so great.
Continued propaganda. After freeing the slaves, mutants, and tribals from Enclave rule, and the execution of the most hardline cult-indoctrinated Enclave overseers, the northern tribes declared their independence from the NCR and seceded from the Union. They believed our encouragement campaign that told them they had a right to their land and self-government. This was instrumental in arming them to overthrow the Enclave, but they felt at the end they were only trading one master for another.
Maybe because they were?
This was not in our best interests. These are fertile croplands with access to the frontier, which had never been scavenged due to the brutal cold weather few are equipped to handle.
I keep hearing about this frontier place, but it seems like I would never want to go there.
So we allowed the opportunity to once again reverse the roles, and allowed settlements to fail. The Gek the Enclave hijacked had been fitted by them with a remote termination switch. We disabled it, causing crops to fail, and requiring NCR technicians to fix them, lest they all starve. We pushed criminal gangs of raiders from Dragon's army north at the behest of new Reno mob families, and we sent a detachment of troops north into the cold to flush the Vault Vikings south, further requiring the protection of the NCR. Now dependent on big circle trade caravans for food and water, the tribes once again felt incompetent, beaten, and in need of salvation. We provided that salvation. Now they are our most loyal taxpayers.
This is the most disgusting, overreaching bullshit. I can't can't believe this is why everybody hates the NCR. This is what the NCR does. They are no better than the people they claim to hate. This is war crimes against your own people. The only difference between the NCR and the Enclave is that the NCR does it with a smile. Fuck you too.
Analysis of the Raider Tribes, Part 1, by Allison V. Notes on Raiders. The Raider Alliance is a tightly controlled military dictatorship under the leadership of Juan Maxon Elsdragon, the son of an exiled Brotherhood elder and a woman leading a band of survivalists, who have opposed integration with the NCR for 100 years now.
I wonder why they've been opposing integration with the NCR. Maybe they saw what they did to those who were left over after they defeated the Enclave.
Over the last several decades of cleaning California of raiders, we've been watching the survivalists at Athens Tech Mine grow steadily in power as the NCR's efforts to get rid of criminal tribes pushes these various peoples into the deep deserts beyond civilization's watchful eye. From NCR notes 40 years ago, they were already a rebel faction who refused to join the NCR and welcomed every tribe who wanted to resist integration into their ranks. At first, this wasn't a problem. They stayed in the Black Hills and mostly raided towards Arizona around the Dune Sea. Rarely did they return to harass the hub or boneyard. It was agreed that I-15 was too hot and too dangerous to travel, the sandstorms and mostly barren wastes not as expedient to travel as the coast. But after some change in leadership in the mine, where many raiders were killed, they began to offer refuge to all the criminal bands from Northern California down to Mexico. They even broke into an NCR prison and liberated our labor camp there, all of whom escaped into Athens before we could catch them, and New Reno senators interceded when the subject to go after them came up. Protected by New Reno politics, and too far out of the way to worry about, they grew into a significant threat. Several attempts were made to assault them, but the best NCR troops could do was keep them at a stalemate. As the need to explore I-15 became more pressing, tensions have built up, and a peace treaty with the raiders has assured safe passage of the Long 15 to the hub from the boneyard for certain trade caravans. Now Athens is populated by many tribes, few of whom are recognizable. We will attempt to infiltrate and document them as soon as we can.
She seems a bit biased towards the NCR, but at least she's trying to do some good by documenting the tribes.
The Survivalists. The Survivalists are the oldest of the raider tribes. They appear to be pre-war survivors who used the deep mine shafts at Athens Tech to hide during the long winter and built a sustainable community. They once had a strong authoritarian bent, but in a context of conservative liberty. They had a stringent leadership and system of ethical values that prized the independence of individual families, but under an unquestionable military dictatorship. At first this seems ironic, because how can they champion the rights and freedoms of their well-armed and largely independent families, but yet somehow enforce total authoritarian leadership? That answer comes when you speak to each family and realize they are brainwashed. All of their efforts and successes they describe to their leadership and community security, and all their failures they blame on scapegoats they must defend against. Those scapegoats then go on to justify slavery and the exploitation of weaker peoples nearby their mine, whom they may trade with equitably one day, then raid the very next. They tax people outside their home but never one another. They only ever seem to punish crimes committed against one another, usually punishing one another by a fine, but to attack one family from outside is to attack them all. They believe in their own supremacy as healthy survivors shielded from radiation in the mine, and persecute mutants as inferior.
So these were the libertarians, and look where that ended up.
As more and more wild tribes join their ranks as allies, it seems their ideological purity is waning. They are growing desperate for more war fodder as they prepare to battle the NCR, a threat they use to fearmonger and drum up additional vitriolic isolationism. The Psychos. While it is obvious that many raider tribes lack basic medicine, the Psychos, also known as psychonauts, are a picture of health among the wasteland inhabitants. Common wasteland bloatflies hunt by launching mutated larvae from their thorax that deliver a mild neurotoxin via a barbed tip, paralyzing prey to be consumed or serve as hosts for their larvae. The bloatflies of the past have instead mutated these projectiles as a vector for parasitic colonization. Larvae grow inside the victim's body, digesting lymph tissues before swelling up to hideous goiters and bursting out in a shower of maggots. To combat this menace, it seems the Psycho tribes adopted and tamed a colony of mutated arachnids who spin webs in their hideouts, catching the bloatflies and eating them before they can infect the raiders. But the spiders also colonize their hosts, planting eggs in the skulls of their victims and bursting out as moon nymphs. So the Psychos rely on a steady stream of warm bodies, still living or recently dead, to sacrifice to their spider gods. They milk them for antiseptic silk threads for sutures and their venom for painkillers. Some even say they work just as well as stim packs. Some of the elders are wise enough to understand that this isn't magic, but the vast numbers of raiders who survive to adulthood thanks to this symbiotic relationship, protected from disease and feared by other tribes, simply accept the lore and worship these spiders as glowing gods. They are fervent enough to kill for their gods, and anyone brave enough to give their tribe a home.
I mean, I'll respect them and call them psychonauts, but this is horrible and nobody should be doing this to other people. Ugh.
The Vipers. While the NCR rooted them out of their shrine northeast of Junktown years ago, the Vipers persist as a cult of animalistic shamans who took to raiding as part of their religious rites.
Animalistic, really? God, why does everyone in the NCR think they're more civilized than these tribes?
They worshipped a massive snake, the size of a large bus, who lived under their shrine in a massive pit. The great snake, also referred to as the mother serpent, was a source of awe to them, and terror. Once a month, the Vipers fall into a deep trance through a dangerous mixture of alcohol and snake venom. Anyone who doesn't wake is considered to have been found unworthy by the great snake. When the Vipers reach manhood, they are given a special mixture of the pit viper venom. Those who die, or are in a coma for more than 7 nights, are given as sacrifices to the children. The snakes in the pit are officially called the Children of the Great Snake. Those who survive the week-long delirium become warriors of the Great Snake, also known as the Chosen Ones. There is also a monthly ritual, where the venom is taken by the high priests and priestesses of the tribe in small quantities, which causes bizarre dreams. This is called the Winding Way of the Great Snake, because many claim to see the Great Snake come to them in their dreams. When it is time for a captured prisoner to be sacrificed, he is typically hurled into a pit at midnight. After the NCR killed the snake, they had its corpse skinned in front of the cult, which enraged them, and only deepened their devotion to her in death, claiming she would be reborn among her children. They smuggled some baby snakes out of the cavern and have been attempting to breed a new mother snake, but it seems the offspring are sterile. What is left of the Vipers are gradually losing their old ways, adopting the attire of your average raider and simply obeying orders. It seems their way of life is finally coming to an end long after the death of their god, but several priestesses keep the faith alive.
You know, I really don't approve of human sacrifice, but I feel like the NCR could have worked with them so that they could have their culture without killing people instead of, just murdering their god right in front of them and making the situation worse. So yeah, thanks NCR. You always make everything better.
The Black Vultures. We're not sure where the Black Vultures come from or what they believe. They speak some mongrel form of Old Spanish and keep to themselves.
Mongrel, really?
What little we have learned comes from watching black vultures in captivity in NCR prison facilities. Through translators and linguists, we've been able to learn of a prophet taught to them as children, passed along from their ancestors, who were related to the jackals and Khans from Vault 15. Who this prophet is, we are not sure. We've seen shrines to a woman wearing a skull and long robes, holding a scythe and ringed with flowers in the desert, but we can't seem to make a connection with any prophet in the flesh. Any attempt to locate him or her has been in vain. It seems even the vultures themselves do not know if he or she is real. It's more a matter of faith.
That must be the Madre I heard about.
They prize a leather outfit among their higher-ups emblazoned with sayings of this prophet and worship death. They feed carrion birds as a good luck charm. It is obvious these raiders are vicious combatants, terrorizing targets by circling caravans and towns, screaming and then descending all at once. We will learn more if we can breach the language barrier.
How is that obvious? If you don't know what they're saying, they could be screaming to make a deal with you or to come out and talk to them or something, not just immediately attacking. They could be trying to communicate. It's not their fault you guys don't understand them. It's not their fault that the NCR doesn't speak Spanish.
Road Bandits. Made up of assorted tribes all blended together, the Road Bandits are not part of the Raider Alliance. They were cast out by the Survivalists and seem to simply swarm the valley in small armed bands. Jackals, Packers Grenadiers, the Necro Nation, and other tribal raiders all now gather around campfires together in their exile from Athens Tech, hunted by Survivalists and NCR alike. Most of them are from tribes the Survivalists deem unfit to live in their ranks or exiled criminals from the Alliance. Lately, they have taken to raiding caravans and making a nuisance of themselves. They are dangerous in packs, but lacking ammunition, they must resort to throwing sticks and stones. No real threat to the NCR military or Raider Alliance, but possibly dangerous for traders and homesteaders living on their own.
This is sad. Regardless of what they're doing, what Allison is saying is culture's being snuffed out. And these are the leftovers of that. The people who just have nowhere to go. I'm sure if the NCR would actually welcome them and help them be better, then they would go to them. That the NCR is just creating their own problems by leaving them to fend for themselves.
Analysis of the Raider Tribes Part 2 by Allison V. Rebel She. This group seems to be related to those that fled into the desert, electing to become highly advanced raiders. Dragon is said to have brought them from a new Reno prison facility. There was a disaster in San Francisco involving some mutant vine that grew to engulf almost the entire city and render it uninhabitable for a time. These She may be related, since they are seen carrying small vine plants they seem to hold as sacred. They claim the sacred vine speaks to them of empire and glory. I cannot say if this is true or not. Their armor mostly seems to be made of pre-war museum pieces, or assembled by hand with great care from Brahmin hide. Others wear more advanced technology-based armor. They take great pride in their weaponry and technology, rarely, if ever, interfacing with the other tribes. Only Dragon seems to know how to communicate with them. A woman named the Blue Ghost, or sometimes the She, is rumored to be the most dangerous raider in the pass, having killed scores of people on Dragon's orders.
This seems really interesting. I'd like to learn more about them.
Vault Vikings. The Vault Vikings are raiders from former Portland. They speak fluent English, but some speak a language they called Old Norse. I interviewed one of them in an NCR rehabilitation program as part of his commuted sentence for raiding. He said his tribe came from a vault in former Portland, number 37. Deep underground, this vault had no walls or hallways, and apparently no artificial lighting or technology, just a great forest below the earth, many miles across, lit from above by a fake sun and moon, mimicking the sky. They were told to perform as actors in an anachronistic historical simulation taught to believe that Ragnarok, the fate of the gods, had come to the world before, and that they are descendants of a man and woman, Ask and Embla. Those who refused to participate were killed. A few could read the books they were supposed to be acting upon. A few knew that the books were just historical documents from long before the before times, but after so many generations, the cult of belief was so strong few could remember that there was a world before, other than as hushed whispers of madmen condemned to die beyond the forests. One day, a great wall lifted, and other tribes were introduced that were hostile, called Saxons and Celts. After a tense encounter, they went to war, and fought to the last man. The Vault Vikings stood victorious. The rest lay dead on the fake forest floor. Then the door to the outside world opened, the barren wastes of the frontier, frozen and desolate. They raided south looking for food and found no traces of civilization. A few settled, a few moved south towards warmer weather. That is how they encountered the NCR, and after being captured and convicted of raiding, their entire tribe was incarcerated. They were eventually liberated in the breakout of Tibet's prison, and Elsdragon led them to the pass, where they integrated into the Raider Alliance.
So this must have been a vault experiment. That's so messed up, though. Were they just trying to recreate wars from the Middle Ages and, see who won? So, and they seem to be from the frontier, too. And they would have been genocided by the NCR if Elsdragon hadn't broken them out. Huh.
Great Khans. The Great Khans are but a shadow of their former selves. Both their numbers and morale have been ravaged by a series of massacres and displacements. Khans reside in Mongolian-style tents called jers, and travel as nomads. This made them unsuitable to the Raider Alliance, who permanently reside in Athens Tech. Chased out of California in the early years of the Republic, the Khans have been said to settle in the Mojave in Arizona at a place called Bullhead. They have maintained a relationship with the Raider Alliance, but not much of one. They are mostly seen as mercenaries for hire, but from time to time, you'll see one in Athens Tech.
Huh, I didn't see any in Athens Tech.
The Botniks. Less of a tribe and more of a small band, the Botniks are a group of Russian roboticists from the former Soviet Union who washed up along the coasts of Northern California several years ago. Only one of them has been captured and died in prison before I had a chance to interview him. But it was said his brothers and family used their technology to battle the Wasteland Scouts, and eventually escaped to Athens Tech after robbing a she-bank vault. No one has seen the Botniks in several years. It's possible that's because they were sold by Elsdragon or they were killed by the other raider tribes in the Alliance. Whatever is true, they made quite an impression during the bank robbery, using a fleet of repurposed pre-war robots made of scrap parts and guns to terrorize the population, who are still afraid of bad machines many years later.
I wish Rossman was still here so he could tell me about these people. I really wonder what happened to them.
The Necro Nation. The Necro Nation were remnants of a ghoul refugee group from Necropolis, said to be buried under the sands out by Bakersfield. Many were badly deformed and injured. The lead ghouls, having been exposed to so much mutagenic radiation, had effectively become glowing piles of deformed flesh. The Necro Nation tried to merge into the Raider Alliance, but their ghouls were too close to becoming feral, and had to be locked away in Athens Tech's deep caverns. It is said there is one left in the mine, selling slaves for the Black Horse branch of the Alliance. When they were still together as a band, the Necros could be seen leading raiding parties full of ferals chained up to the commanders, who then unleashed them on unsuspecting villages and caravans. They are little more than boogeyman now.
That's what they're called, ghouls. And there are non-feral ones and feral ones. Those feral ones in the cave must have been these guys. Wait a sec, if they were worried about them going feral, then why did they put them in the caves that were irradiated? It probably only made it worse.
The Voiceless. The Voiceless are less a tribe, and more like an amalgam of rejected slaves and mutants who were exiled to the deep underground mines of Athens Tech to act as laborers in the hydroponic gardens deep below ground. These vast farming operations in the mine are the primary food supply for the Raider Alliance. Their water supplies are also tended by these slaves, who are said to have nearly translucent pale skin and glow-in-the-dark eyes. The name Voiceless is an apt metaphor, as much of it as it is literal. These people cannot speak, having their vocal cords clipped by their leadership. It is said that their hushed whispers are still heard echoing in the deep caverns, but only a few people have dared venture down below to see if it is true.
I've met them, and I wish I want to save them. I want to get them out of the caves.
NCR Citizen Application Terminal. Welcome, prospective NCR citizen.
I guess I should apply. Maybe it'll help me deal with the NCR in the future.
Please enter your name.
Angel.
Please enter your occupation.
Mercenary.
Please enter your residence name.
I guess Union City?
Complete. This certificate qualifies one Angel for consideration of the new California Republic citizenship. May the Great Mother look down upon you with welcoming eyes, prospective citizen. Submit this document to your nearest NCR territorial outpost with trade in value equal to 500 caps in exchange for legal tender. Your caps will not be returned to you upon your completion of your citizen hearing. Terms and conditions may apply. Criminals, raiders, and hostile tribals not eligible to apply. Not applicable for residency in Vault City and New Reno. Other charges and fees may apply. Issued at NCR Territorial HQ. The Pass.
Why am I surprised? Of course. Fuck 500 caps. Fuck you. I picked up a bunch of notes in the battle from the dead soldiers. Maybe I should go through them now.
Dear Joe, it's good to hear from your last letter you're doing well. Congratulations on the promotion. I'm also okay though. It's coming up to almost a year since we lost Robert. I know you know the date. He was your best friend too. On reflection, I want to sincerely thank you for all of the help you've given us this past year. Your support emotionally has kept me standing and helped me stay strong for the kids. Your support financially is the only thing helping us keep the farm. You're the one thing that's kept this family from falling apart. I know you don't have any family by blood, but you aren't alone. You're a part of ours. Be safe out there. I can't imagine losing you too. With love, Sophie.
Oh no. I wish I could find Sophie and help them. They're gonna need it. Oh, God, are they even gonna find out that he died? I'm gonna take every NCR dog tag I can find. I hope I can find someone to take them and return them to where they need to go.
Kelsey, I always knew you could do it. My big sister is a Shady Sands University graduate. You're gonna do great things, especially with Dr. Presper. I'm sorry I missed the ceremony. You know I'd have been there in a heartbeat if I could have. I promise I'll make it up to you when I get back to the hub. Hug Mom and Dad tight for me, and tell Buster he's a good dog. Love you, big sis. Marina.
Oh, that's so sad. She must have really wanted to be there for her big sister.
To Corporal Ian Lynn, from Dear Old Friends. Hello, Ian. It's been a while, hasn't it? You probably thought you'd seen the last of us once you skipped town, didn't you? We must admit, the pass is quite a long way to go to escape your sins. But like we told you in the beginning, there is no running away from this life. Do you think that putting on a uniform and playing soldier will erase the things you did for us, make you some sort of hero? It won't. You can finish up your tour, but then you're coming back to us. No one leaves the Syndicate. Oh, and your wife is looking just ravishing these days. Life at that little safe house of yours really suits her. You're a lucky man. See you when you get home, Ian.
Oh shit, what did this guy do? Ugh. His poor wife. God. I wonder who the hell the Syndicate are. They might have something to do with the mob.